The piano keys were cold beneath Cecilia's fingers. She hadn't expected that. In all the years she'd played through every recital and every late-night practice session, the ivory had always felt warm, live. But today, in the hollow silence of St. Paul's Cathedral, they were as cold as the marble floor beneath her feet, as cold as the mahogany casket 10 feet behind her. Her fingers found the opening notes of Chopin's Nocturne in C-sharp minor without conscious thought, muscle memory, the same piece she'd played for Oliver when he came home from France, when his hands still shook too much to hold a teacup, when the nightmares woke him every night at 3:15, precise as clockwork. The music filled the cathedral slowly like smoke curling upward. Cecilia kept her eyes on the keys, not on the faces in the pews, not on her mother's rigid back in the front row, spine straight as a general's, not on the empty space where her father should have been sitting if his heart hadn't given out 3 days after signing the marriage contract that would save them all. Or damn them all. She wasn't sure which yet. The melody shifted darker now. Her left hand carried the bass line like a heartbeat, steady, inevitable. The way Thomas had described finding her father in his study, slumped over his desk, pen still in hand. The letter he'd been writing addressed to her, half-finished ink still wet. She'd burned it without reading past the first line. My dearest Cecilia, there are things you must know before what? Before he died, before she married a stranger, before their carefully constructed world of old money and older secrets finally collapsed under its own weight. It didn't matter now. The last notes faded into silence. Cecilia's hands remained suspended above the keys, frozen in the final chord. For a moment, the only sound was the February wind rattling the stained glass windows. Then came the rustle of fabric as the congregation rose. The service was over. She stood turned and saw him for the first time. He was standing at the back of the cathedral, apart from the other mourners. Tall, dark coat that looked too expensive for Boston, even old money Boston. His face was in shadow, backlit by the gray winter light filtering through the entrance, but she could feel his eyes on her. Steady, unwavering. Adrian Blackwood, her husband-to-be. She'd never seen a photograph. Her mother had said photographs were unnecessary. The marriage contract was binding regardless of faces or feelings. But Cecilia had imagined him anyway. In her mind, he'd been some caricature of new money Chicago broad and loud and crude, all slicked hair and cigar smoke. The man watching her from the shadows was none of those things. He didn't approach, didn't offer condolences. Just stood there as the mourners filed past him, whispering behind gloved hands. The Blackwood son, the industrial fortune, the arranged marriage, the scandal of it all. Cecilia lifted her chin and walked toward him. Her heels echoed on the marble, click, 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 like a countdown. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see his face now, sharp features, gray eyes the color of winter sky, a scar faint and old cutting through his left eyebrow. He looked older than 29, or maybe just more tired. Miss Ashford, his voice was quieter than she'd expected. Educated, East Coast prep school, not Chicago streets. Mahar Blackwood? They stood facing each other, neither extending a hand, neither looking away. I'm sorry for your loss, he said, the formal words, the expected words, but something in his tone made them sound almost sincere. You, Cecilia heard herself say, you've gained a bride from it. A muscle twitched in his jaw. I've gained a contract. There's a difference, Is there? I'd like to think so. Behind them, her mother's voice cut through the murmurs. Cecilia, the family is waiting at the car. Cecilia didn't turn. The wedding is in 2 weeks. I know. Do you want this? The question hung between them. Around them, the mourners pretended not to listen, but Cecilia could feel their attention like heat on her skin. Adrian's gray eyes held hers. For a moment, she thought he might tell the truth, whatever that was. But then something shuddered in his expression, and he stepped back. One has nothing to do with it, he said, for either of us. He turned and walked out of the cathedral. Cecilia watched him go, watched his dark coat disappear into the gray afternoon, and felt something cold settle in her chest. Not quite fear, not quite relief, just the weight of winter pressing down. The Ashford mansion sat on Beacon Hill like a crown on a dying king. 3 stories of federal-style brick with black shutters and a fanlight over the door that had watched over Boston society since 1804. Cecilia's great-great-grandfather had built it with textile money, back when the family name meant something beyond debt and desperation. Now it meant collateral. She stood in the foyer, still in her funeral dress, and watched Thomas carry her father's personal effects up the stairs. The old butler moved slowly. His arthritis was worse in the cold. Her father had promised him a pension, a cottage somewhere warm. Florida, maybe? Or Charleston. There would be no pension now. No cottage. Just whatever Adrian Blackwood decided to keep when he took over the household. You should eat something. Cecilia turned. Her mother stood in the doorway to the parlor, still in black, still perfectly composed. Eleanor Ashford had been a beauty once. You could still see it in the bone structure, the way she held herself. But something had gone brittle over the years, like porcelain left too long in the cold. I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten since yesterday. I'm aware. Eleanor's lips thinned. Cecilia, you cannot afford to be weak right now. Weak. You know what I mean. But Cecilia didn't, or rather she knew too many things her mother might mean. Weak as in emotional, weak as in resistant to duty, weak as in still grieving her father 3 days dead, and her brother 3 years dead, and her entire life scattered like ashes in the wind. She walked past her mother into the parlor. The room was cold, no fire in the grate. They were conserving coal now, conserving everything. The furniture, Heppel-white chairs, a Queen Anne sofa, a mahogany pianoforte that predated the Civil War sat covered in dust sheets, like ghosts, like they had already moved out. He seemed, Eleanor paused, searching for a word, presentable. Who, Mr. Blackwood? You spoke with him. Briefly. And Cecilia sank into one of the covered chairs. The fabric exhaled dust. And what, mother? He's a stranger. A stranger I'm marrying in 14 days to pay off father's debts. To save the family. Is there a difference? Eleanor crossed the room. Her footsteps didn't make a sound. She'd always moved like that, like a woman who'd learned early to take up as little space as possible. She sat beside Cecilia, back straight, hands folded. Your father loved you, she said quietly. You must believe that. Did he, or did he love the idea of me, the dutiful daughter, the good investment? That's unfair. Is it? Cecilia looked at her mother, really looked at her, saw the lines around her mouth, the gray threading through her dark hair that no amount of pomade could hide, the way her hands trembled just slightly before she clasped them tighter. Tell me, mother, did you love father, or was your marriage also just a contract? Eleanor's face went perfectly still. For a moment, Cecilia thought she might actually answer. But then the moment passed and the mask slipped back into place. Love is a luxury, Eleanor said. Survival is not. She rose and walked to the door, paused, didn't turn around. The wedding dress arrives tomorrow. Make sure you're here for the fitting. Then she was gone, and Cecilia was alone in the room full of ghosts. She found Thomas in her father's study that evening. The old butler was packing books into crates, moving with careful precision. Cecilia stood in the doorway and watched him wrap her father's collection of Emerson in brown paper. First editions, worth more than most people earned in a year, not worth enough to save them. Miss Cecilia, Thomas looked up startled. I didn't hear you come in. I'm sorry, I should have knocked. It's your house, for 2 more weeks. Thomas didn't argue. He set down the book he was holding and straightened slowly, one hand on the small of his back. He looked older than his 60 years tonight, tired, diminished. I want you to know, Cecilia said quietly, that I'll speak to Mr. Blackwood about keeping you on, about the pension father promised. Miss Cecilia, you don't have to. I do. You've been with this family since before I was born. Since Oliver was born. You deserve better than to be dismissed like furniture. Thomas's expression softened. Your father was a good man. Whatever else happens, remember that. He was a good man caught in bad circumstances. Was he? Yes. Then why did he gamble away our future? Why did he invest in companies that didn't exist? Why did he? Her voice cracked. She pressed her lips together, fighting for control. Why did he die and leave me to clean up his mess? Thomas crossed the room slowly. He'd never touched her before. Servants didn't, but he put a hand on her shoulder now, gentle as a benediction. Your father made mistakes, he said, but he didn't gamble. And he didn't invest foolishly. Cecilia looked up at him. What do you mean? I mean, Thomas glanced at the door, then back at her. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I mean, there are things about your father's death that don't make sense. Things about the finances that don't add up. But it's not safe to talk about it here. Not safe, Thomas, what I heard you talking about. But the butler was already stepping back, his expression closing. Forget I said anything, miss. It's just an old man's imagination. Thomas, I should finish the packing. Your mother wants the study cleared by Friday. He turned back to the books. Conversation over. But his hands were shaking as he wrapped another volume, and Cecilia saw him glance toward the window, toward the street outside, like he was watching for something or someone. The nightmare came that night as it always did. She was back in Oliver's room, the night he came home from France, November 1918. The war was over, everyone said. The boys were coming home whole and safe and victorious. Oliver came home in pieces, not physically. His body was intact, arms and legs where they should be. No scars you could see. But his eyes, God, his eyes, like he'd seen something that burned out everything behind them, left just smoking ruins. In the dream, Cecilia sat beside his bed. He hadn't spoken in 3 days, just stared at the ceiling, hands clenched in the sheets. The doctor said shell shock, said it would pass, said lots of boys came back like this. Give it time, give it patience. In the dream, Oliver finally turned his head to look at her. Ceci, he whispered, her childhood nickname. I can't do this anymore. Can't do what? Be this, be broken, be the ghost in their perfect house. You're not a ghost. You're my brother. You're alive. But Oliver just smiled, sad and small and so tired. I don't feel alive. I feel like I died over there and someone else came home wearing my face. Oliver, promise me something, Ceci. Promise me you'll get out. Promise me you won't let them trap you the way they trapped me. Trapped you, Ollie. No one trapped you. You volunteered. You wanted to serve. Did Father want me to serve? Did Mother want the prestige? Did I even have a choice? He reached for her hand. His palm was wet with sweat, fever hot. There are secrets in this house, he said. Secrets that will eat you alive if you let them. Promise me you'll leave. Promise me you'll run as far as you can. I promise. Liar. Then the dream shifted the way dreams do. She was running down the corridor. Oliver's door was open. Thomas was shouting. Her mother was screaming. And there was blood, so much blood spreading across the hardwood floor like spilled wine. The gunshot echoed through the house. Once. Just once. Cecilia woke in her own bed, gasping. The room was dark. Cold. The kind of cold that came from within, not without. She pressed her hands to her face and felt wetness. Tears. She'd been crying in her sleep again. The clock on her nightstand read 3:17. 2 minutes later than usual. She lay there staring at the ceiling and wondered if Oliver had been right. If they were all just ghosts in a perfect house trapped by secrets and silence, and the weight of expectations. She wondered if Adrian Blackwood had ghosts too. She wondered if in 2 weeks she'd become one of them. The wedding dress arrived on a Wednesday. The seamstress was a narrow woman with narrow eyes and narrow lips, and she circled Cecilia like a vulture circling carrion. Pin here, tuck there. The fabric was silk satin imported from Paris before the war, white as bone, heavy as sin. Eleanor watched from a chair by the window, her hands folded in her lap. It needs to be taken in at the waist, the seamstress said. The girl has lost weight. I'm standing right here, Cecilia said. Then stand still. The dress was strangling her, or maybe that was just her corset. Or maybe it was everything: the dress, the corset, the wedding, the marriage, the future pressing in from all sides until there was no room left to breathe. Mother, she said quietly, may I ask you something? Of course, Amaris. Did you know about Father's debts, about how bad things were? Eleanor's expression didn't change. I knew your father was worried, but not that we were ruined. No one is ruined, Cecilia. We are simply repositioning. Repositioning. The word tasted like ash. Is that what we're calling it? What would you prefer I call it? A crisis, a catastrophe? Would that make you feel better? It might make me feel less like a sacrifice. The seamstress's pins paused. Even she seemed startled by the bitterness in Cecilia's voice. But Eleanor just sat there perfectly composed, perfectly still. You are not a sacrifice, she said finally. You are a daughter doing her duty to her family, as I did, as my mother did before me, as women have done since the beginning of time. And if I don't want to do my duty, then your father died for nothing, and this family ends with you. The words hung in the air like smoke. The seamstress finished her pinning in silence and left without a word, taking the dress with her. Cecilia stood in her undergarments, arms wrapped around herself, suddenly cold. You think me cruel, Eleanor said. She was still looking out the window. You think I don't understand, but I understand better than you know. Then help me understand, please, because all I see is that I'm being told to pay father's debts, and everyone is pretending it's something noble. Eleanor stood. For the first time in days, her composure cracked. Just slightly, just enough for Cecilia to see the exhaustion beneath. You want to know what I think? Eleanor crossed the room until she stood directly in front of her daughter. I think your father was a good man who made terrible choices. I think those choices have consequences, and we are living with them. I think Adrian Blackwood is our only option, and we are very lucky he agreed to this arrangement. Lucky. Yes, lucky. Because there are worse fates than marrying a wealthy man. Such as marrying a poor one. Such as not marrying at all. Such as watching everything your family built for generations crumble into nothing because you were too proud or too frightened to do what needed to be done. Eleanor's voice had risen. Not to a shout she never shouted, but to something harder, sharper. She caught herself, took a breath, smoothed her skirt. This is not the life I wanted for you, she said quietly. But it is the life we have, and you will survive it, because you are my daughter, and Ashford women survive. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the frame. Your father left you a letter. It's in the top drawer of his desk. Thomas was supposed to give it to you, but I told him to wait. Wait until after the wedding, until you were settled. Why? Because sometimes the dead have things to say that the living aren't ready to hear. Then she was gone. Cecilia stood alone in the fitting room in her undergarments and her pride and felt the walls closing in. She went to the study that night. Thomas had finished packing. The bookshelves were empty. The desk was bare except for one leather-bound journal, her father's handwriting on the cover, property of Henry Ashford. The letter wasn't in the top drawer. It was inside the journal, folded, once her name written on the outside in her father's careful script. She sat in his chair, the leather still smelled like him tobacco and old paper, and unfolded the letter with shaking hands. My dearest Cecilia, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you are preparing to marry a man you do not love to save a family that may not deserve saving. I am sorry, God knows I am sorry. But there are things you must know before you take this step. Things I should have told you years ago, but was too much a coward to speak aloud. The debts you think I owe, they are not what they seem. The investments that failed were not bad luck. They were sabotage. Someone has been systematically destroying our family's wealth, and I have spent the last 3 years trying to discover who. I believe I have found the answer. I believe the same person who ruined us is the same person who... The letter ended there. Mid-sentence, ink smudged where his hand had fallen, where his heart had given out, where whatever truth he'd been trying to tell had died with him. Cecilia read it 3 times. Then she sat back in the chair and stared at the empty bookshelves and tried to understand. Sabotage. Deliberate destruction, and her father had known, had been investigating, had been about to tell her who was responsible, who should she trust, who should she fear. She looked around the study. Everything was packed. Everything was being moved to storage or sold or given away. In 2 weeks, Adrian Blackwood would own this house, would sit in this chair, would sleep in the master bedroom where her father had died. Would he know about the secrets? Was he part of them? Was that why he'd agreed to this marriage? Not out of duty or family pressure, but because he knew something she didn't. Cecilia folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her pocket. Then she opened the journal. Most of it was mundane. Business notes, dinner parties, comments about the weather, and the Red Sox, and Mrs. Cabot's insufferable new hat. But toward the end, the entries changed. October 14th, 1922. Someone is following me. I'm certain of it now. The same man in the gray coat. Outside the bank, outside the club, outside Oliver's grave. October 30th, 1922. The accounts don't match. Withdrawals I never authorized. Investments in companies that don't exist. It's systematic, methodical. This isn't incompetence. This is destruction. November 18th, 1922. I know who it is now. God help me, I know. But I can't prove it. Not yet. If I'm wrong, I'll destroy innocent lives. If I'm right, December 2nd, 1922. Eleanor doesn't know, can't know, must never know. The shame would kill her. But Cecilia is strong. She can handle the truth. She can. The entry stopped. Nothing after that. Just blank pages. Like the truth had been too heavy to write down. Cecilia sat in the dark study and tried to piece together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Her father had known something, had discovered something. And it had killed him, maybe not literally, but the stress, the investigation, the weight of whatever secret he'd been carrying, it had stopped his heart just as surely as a bullet. And now she was about to marry into it, whatever it was. She thought about Adrian Blackwood, his gray eyes, the way he'd stood at the back of the cathedral watching, the scar through his eyebrow, the quiet voice. Want has nothing to do with it. Was he victim or villain, pawn or player? In 2 weeks she would find out. In 2 weeks she would become Mrs. Adrian Blackwood. In 2 weeks she would either find the truth or become another ghost in this haunted house. Cecilia closed the journal and sat in the darkness and listened to the old house settle around her, creaking, groaning, keeping its secrets. For now, the piano called to her at midnight. She tried to sleep, failed, tried to read, failed. Finally gave up and went downstairs in her nightgown and robe barefoot on the cold hardwood to the music room where her old life still lived. The room was untouched by the packing. Her mother had insisted. The piano stays, she'd said. It's part of the house, part of the contract. Adrian Blackwood was acquiring a mansion, a name, and a Steinway grand piano that had cost more than most homes. What a bargain. Cecilia sat at the bench and let her fingers find the keys. No sheet music, no particular piece in mind, just notes flowing together like water, finding a channel. Melancholy in D minor. The kind of music that felt like the space between sleeping and waking. The kind of music Oliver used to listen to when the nightmares were bad. She didn't hear the door open, didn't know anyone was there until a voice quiet and carefully neutral said, "Don't stop." Her hands froze. She turned. Adrian Blackwood stood in the doorway, still in his coat, snow dusting his shoulders, like he'd just come in from the street, at midnight, in a house that wasn't his yet. "What are you doing here?" The question came out sharper than she'd intended, but he'd startled her, and she didn't like being startled. "I couldn't sleep." "So you broke into my house?" "Thomas let me in. I wanted to." He paused, seeming to weigh his words. "I wanted to see it, the house, before the wedding, before it becomes mine." "Ours," Cecilia corrected, bitterly. "Before it becomes ours." "Is there a difference?" She almost smiled at that, her own words thrown back at her. "I'd like to think so." Adrian stepped into the room, slowly, like he was approaching something fragile or dangerous. He kept his hands in his coat pockets, kept his distance, stopped beside one of the tall windows that looked out over the snow-covered garden. "You play beautifully," he said. "Thank you." "What was that piece?" "Nothing, just improvising." It sounded like grief. This time Cecilia did smile, small and sad and so tired. Everything sounds like grief these days. They stood in silence, Cecilia on the piano bench, Adrian by the window. Both of them reflected in the dark glass, ghosts of who they used to be, ghosts of who they might become. "I don't want this marriage any more than you do," Adrian said finally. "But I need it, and I think if we're honest, you need it too." "Need and want aren't the same thing." "No, but sometimes they're all we have." Cecilia turned on the bench to face him fully. Why do you need this marriage? You're wealthy, successful, your father's steel empire is thriving. What could you possibly gain from marrying me?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. In the lamplight, she could see his profile clearly. The sharp angles of his face, the scar through his eyebrow, the way his jaw clenched like he was holding something back, holding something in. Respectability, he said finally. Your name, your family's history. The things money cannot buy. Those are your father's reasons, not yours. Does it matter? Yes, because in 2 weeks, I'll be your wife, not your father's. Adrian turned from the window, looked at her directly, those gray eyes clear and cold and completely unreadable. I have a daughter, he said. The words fell into the silence like stones into water. Cecilia felt them ripple through her. Surprise, confusion, then slowly understanding. A daughter. Yes, her name is Lily. She's 5 years old, and she's the reason I'm here. Cecilia stood, walked toward him, stopped 3 feet away, the same distance they'd kept at the cathedral, the same careful space. The scandal, she said. Your father wants to hide her. Not hide her, legitimize her, give her a future that doesn't involve whispers and pointed fingers and closed doors. And a respectable wife gives you that. Yes. Does she know about me, about the wedding? No, she's too young to understand. She thinks I'm traveling for business, that I'll be gone for a while. And after we're married. Adrian looked away, back to the window, back to his reflection in the dark glass. I don't know. I haven't figured that part out yet. Cecilia studied him, this man who would be her husband, this stranger with his own secrets and his own ghosts. She thought about her father's letter, about sabotage and Louise in truths too heavy to speak. She thought about Oliver and his broken eyes and his final terrible choice. She thought about survival. I want to meet her, she said. Your daughter. Before the wedding. I want to know who I'm doing this for. Adrian's head turned sharply. Why? Because you're right, need and want aren't the same thing, but maybe knowing why we need this will make it easier to bear. For the first time since she'd met him, something shifted in Adrian's expression. Not quite warmth, not quite trust, but something softer than the cold distance he'd kept before. All right, he said. Tomorrow, I'll bring her here. Tomorrow. He moved toward the door, paused, turned back. The music, earlier. It wasn't just grief. No, it was also beautiful, haunting, like you were playing for someone who couldn't hear it anymore. Cecilia's throat tightened. I was. Adrian nodded slowly, understanding. Your brother. How did you... Thomas told me, when he let me in, about Oliver, about what happened, and nothing. Just, I'm sorry, for what it's worth. I know what it's like to lose someone. He left before she could ask what he meant. Left her standing alone in the music room with the lamplight and the snow and the piano that held all her grief like a prayer. She sat back down at the bench, put her fingers on the keys, and this time when she played it sounded less like grief and more like something else. Not quite hope, but maybe its cousin, maybe possibility. Lily Blackwood had her father's gray eyes and her mother's dark curls. Cecilia noticed this first. The way the child stood in the foyer of the Ashford mansion, one small hand clutching Adrian's coat, the other holding a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. She wore a navy coat with pearl buttons and patent leather shoes, and she looked at Cecilia with the kind of careful assessment only children and old women could master. This is Miss Ashford, Adrian said quietly, crouching to Lily's level. Remember I told you we were visiting a friend? Friend. The word felt too simple for what they were about to become. But Lily nodded solemnly, still watching Cecilia with those wide gray eyes. Cecilia knelt too, slowly. The hardwood was cold even through her dress. She met Lily at eye level and offered a small smile. Hello, Lily. What's your rabbit's name? The child's grip tightened on the toy. For a moment, Cecilia thought she wouldn't answer. Then barely a whisper. Mr. Hops. That's a very good name. Did you choose it yourself? A nod, small, uncertain. It's perfect for him. He looks like a Mr. Hops to me. Something in Lily's expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but a softening, a willingness to be less afraid. She took a half step forward, still holding her father's coat but leaning towards Cecilia now. Do you have a piano? She asked. Her voice was higher than expected, breathless. Papa said you play piano. I do. Would you like to see it? Another nod, more certain this time. Cecilia stood and extended her hand. After a moment's hesitation, Lily took it. Her palm was small and warm and sticky with something jam, probably, or honey. The kind of mess children always carried with them. The kind of mess that made them real. Adrian watched this exchange with an expression Cecilia couldn't read. Relief, maybe? Or fear? Or something caught between the two. They walked to the music room together, Lily between them. A strange little procession. The child's footsteps echoed in the empty halls, and Cecilia could feel her looking at everything. The chandelier, the portraits, the dust sheets covering furniture like shrouds. Why are things covered? Lily asked. We're packing, Cecilia said, getting ready to move. Where are you moving? I'm not sure yet. Papa moves a lot too, but he always comes back. Cecilia glanced at Adrian over Lily's head. He was looking at the floor, jaw tight. Always comes back, like he left often, like the child was used to his absence. The music room felt different with a child in it, smaller somehow, or maybe just more alive. Lily ran to the piano, immediately reaching up to touch the keys with reverent fingers. She pressed one note, then another, then a whole handful, creating a discordant crash that made her giggle. Lily, Adrian said. Gentle. It's all right, Cecilia said. She sat on the bench and patted the space beside her. Come here, I'll show you. Lily climbed up Mr. Hops, still clutched in one hand. Cecilia guided her small fingers to middle C, pressed down. The notes sang clear and pure in the quiet room. That's a C, Cecilia said. It's the first note most people learn. Want to try the others? For the next 20 minutes, Cecilia taught Lily the C major scale. The child was quick, focused. She made mistakes and laughed at them and tried again. Marian stood by the window watching, not speaking, just present, like a shadow, like a sentinel. When Lily finally tired of the piano, she turned to Cecilia with that serious expression children wore when they were about to say something important. Are you Papa's friend? She asked. Cecilia chose her words carefully. I'm going to be, yes. A special friend. Very special. Like Miss Caroline was. The room went very still. Cecilia felt Adrian tense even from across the room. But Lily just looked at her with those guileless gray eyes waiting for an answer. I don't know who Miss Caroline is, Cecilia said gently. But yes, like that maybe. Lily nodded satisfied. Then she slipped off the bench and ran to her father, wrapping her arms around his leg. I'm hungry, Papa. Then we should go. Adrian's voice was rough. He lifted Lily into his arms, settled her on his hip, looked at Cecilia over the child's dark curls. Thank you for this. You don't have to thank me. I do. You didn't have to be kind to her. She's a child. Of course I had to be kind to her. But Adrian just shook his head, like she'd said something profound, something he hadn't expected. At the door, Lily twisted in her father's arms to wave at Cecilia. Goodbye, Miss Ashford. Will you play piano for me again? Whenever you like. Tomorrow, Cecilia looked at Adrian. He gave the smallest nod. Tomorrow, she agreed. They left, father and daughter. Adrian's coat dusted with fresh snow from outside. Lily's voice echoing in the hallway, asking about lunch, about going to the park, about Mr. Hops needing a new button for his eye. Cecilia stood in the music room and listened to them leave. Listened to the door close. Listened to the silence return. Then she sat at the piano and played the C major scale. 8 notes. Simple. Pure. The first thing every musician learned. The foundation for everything that came after. She played it over and over until her mother called her for fitting number 2. The wedding dress was tighter this time. Either the seamstress had taken in too much at the waist, or Cecilia had lost more weight. Probably both. She stood on the fitting platform and tried to breathe while the woman circled her with pins and tape measures in quiet disapproval. You must eat, the seamstress said. Not unkindly, just matter of fact. Brides who faint at the altar are bad for business. I'll keep that in mind. Eleanor watched from her usual chair, but today she wasn't alone. Mrs. Margaret Cabot sat beside her, resplendent in purple velvet and enormous pearls, the grand dame of Boston society, the woman whose opinion could make or break a family's reputation. She was here to judge. "The dress is lovely," Mrs. Cabot said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "Very traditional, very appropriate for an Ashford." "Thank you," Cecilia managed. "And the groom, the Blackwood boy, I understand he's quite modern." Modern. The word carried weight, implications, new money, questionable pedigree, the kind of man no Ashford would have married 50 years ago, or 20 years ago, or last year if they'd had any choice. "He's acceptable," Eleanor said. Her voice was level, controlled. "His family has been very generous with the settlement." "I'm sure they have." Mrs. Cabot's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Tell me, Cecilia, have you met his family? His father, Wisham?" "Not yet." "Ah, well, you'll find William Blackwood quite formidable. He built his fortune from nothing, you know. Steel mills, railways, the kind of work that leaves a man with rough edges." She said it like an accusation. Like building something from nothing was somehow less noble than inheriting everything and losing it. Cecilia felt anger spark hot in her chest. "My father always said honest work was the noblest kind," she said quietly. Mrs. Cabot's eyebrows rose. "Did he? How progressive of him." "He believed in merit, in earning one's place." "Then he would have been proud of your marriage, marrying for the family's sake. That's certainly earning your place." The words were barbed, designed to wound, but Cecilia kept her face smooth, kept her voice steady, kept the smile fixed in place, even though it felt like a mask slowly cracking. "I'm sure he would have been," she said. The fitting continued in painful silence. When it was finally over, when Cecilia could finally step down and breathe and escape to her room, she found Thomas waiting in the hallway. He looked worried, more than worried, frightened. "Miss Cecilia, I need to speak with you. Privately." "Thomas, what's wrong?" "Not here. In the garden. 10 minutes." He walked away before she could ask more questions. Just left her standing there in the hallway, still in her day dress, heart suddenly racing. She went to her room, changed into a heavier coat, pulled on gloves and a hat. Then she went down the servants' stairs and out the kitchen door into the winter garden. Thomas was waiting by the frozen fountain, his breath misted in the cold air. When he saw her, he glanced around quickly, checking they were alone. "I'm sorry for the dramatics," he said, "but I needed to tell you something. About Oliver." Cecilia's chest tightened. "What about him?" "The story your parents told, about him dying in the war, it's not entirely true. I know he killed himself, Thomas. I was here, I found him." "Yes, but you don't know why." The old butler looked older than ever in the gray afternoon light, smaller, like the secret he was carrying had been crushing him for years. "Oliver didn't have shell shock," Thomas said quietly. "Not the way everyone thought. He was being blackmailed." "Blackmailed by whom?" "I don't know his name, just that he was someone from Oliver's unit, someone who knew things, secret things, about what happened in France, about a mistake Oliver made that got other boys killed." Cecilia felt the world tilt slightly. "What kind of mistake?" "I don't know the details. Oliver never told me, but this man, he started demanding money. First a little, then more, then so much that Oliver couldn't pay. So he went to your father, asked for help, and your father—" Thomas's voice broke. He turned away, looking at the frozen garden, the snow-covered rose bushes, the skeletal trees. "Your father refused," he said. "He said the family couldn't afford another scandal. Not after everything with the investments. Not with Oliver already damaged goods in society's eyes. He told Oliver to handle it himself. And Oliver couldn't. No, so he chose the only way out he could see." Cecilia stood very still. The cold was seeping through her coat, through her skin, settling in her bones. But she barely felt it. All she could feel was rage, hot and bright and all-consuming. "My father let him die," she said. "Your father was trying to protect the family. My father let his son die rather than lose money, rather than face scandal. He chose reputation over Oliver's life." "Miss Cecilia, don't." She held up a hand. "Don't defend him, Thomas. Please, I can't bear it." They stood in silence. The garden around them was dead, dormant, waiting for spring that might never come. Finally, Cecilia found her voice again. "Why are you telling me this now? Why not 3 years ago? Why not at Father's funeral?" Because I think the same man who blackmailed Oliver might be involved in what's happening now. The debts, the sabotage your father wrote about. I think it's all connected. Who is he, this blackmailer? I told you I don't know his name, but there's a man who's been watching the house. Gray coat, dark hair. He was at your father's funeral, standing in the back, and I've seen him twice this week, just standing across the street, watching. A chill ran down Cecilia's spine that had nothing to do with the cold. Did you tell my mother? Your mother has enough to carry, but you need to know, especially now, especially before you marry Mr. Blackwood. What does Adrian have to do with this? Thomas hesitated. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. I don't trust coincidences, Miss Cecilia. Your father dies just as the Blackwoods propose this marriage. A marriage that saves the family, but also gives them control of the house, the accounts, everything. What if they know something we don't? What if they're a part of it? Adrian has a 5-year-old daughter. He's not some criminal mastermind. Men with children can still be criminals. Cecilia wanted to argue, wanted to defend Adrian, but she barely knew him, knew nothing about him except his gray eyes and his careful distance and the way he'd looked when his daughter played piano. She knew nothing except what he'd chosen to show her. What do you want me to do? She asked. Be careful, watch. Don't trust anyone completely, not even your husband-to-be. Not even you, Thomas smiled sadly, especially not me. I'm just an old man who's kept too many secrets for too long. He left her there in the frozen garden, alone with the dead roses and the skeletal trees and the weight of another secret pressing down. Adrian came back that evening, no warning, no message. Just appeared at the door while Cecilia was having dinner alone in the small parlor. Thomas showed him in with a careful, neutral expression that told Cecilia the butler was already watching, already suspicious. I'm sorry for interrupting, Adrian said. He hadn't taken off his coat. Snow dusted his shoulders again. He'd been walking. But I wanted to thank you for today, with Lily. You already thanked me. Not adequately. Cecilia set down her fork. The food was barely touched anyway. She hadn't been hungry in days. It wasn't just kindness, you know. I wanted to meet her, to understand what I'm agreeing to. And do you understand now? I understand that you love her, that you're trying to give her a life that doesn't include shame or whispers. I understand that much. Adrian moved to the window, the same window he'd stood by last night. Like he was drawn to boundaries, to edges, to the space between inside and outside. Her mother died when she was 2, he said quietly. Caroline, that's who Lily mentioned today. She was a singer at a club in Chicago. Beautiful, reckless, completely unsuitable for someone like me. But you loved her. I thought I did. Or maybe I just loved the idea of her, of choosing something for myself instead of having it chosen for me, of being something other than William Blackwood's son. He turned from the window, looked at Cecilia directly. When she died, I brought Lily to live with me, secretly, because my father said if anyone knew, if society found out I had an illegitimate child with a nightclub singer, the family would be ruined. Our business partners would disappear. Our reputation would crumble. Everything he'd built would turn to ash. So you've been hiding her for 3 years. Yes, with a nanny in a house across town, visiting when I can, living 2 lives, being 2 people. And marrying me makes you whole again. Marrying you makes her legitimate, gives her my name legally, gives her a future where she can go to school and make friends and not live in shadows. Cecilia stood, walked to where he stood by the window. Outside, snow was falling again, soft, silent, covering the city in white. What happens to us, she asked, after we're married, after Lily is safe and legitimate and has everything she needs? What happens to you and me? I don't know. That's not good enough. It's the truth. Or is it just what you tell yourself so you don't have to think about the future? Adrian's jaw tightened. What do you want me to say, Cecilia? That we'll fall in love? That this arranged marriage will turn into some fairy tale? We both know better than that. I want you to say we'll at least try to be partners, try to build something real, try to be more than just 2 people trapped in a contract. And if we can't, then at least we'll know we tried. They stood facing each other, close enough to touch, close enough to see the doubt in each other's eyes, the fear, the desperate, fragile hope that maybe somehow this could be more than just survival. Adrian reached out slowly, gave her time to step back, but she didn't. His hand touched her cheek, gentle, uncertain. His palm was cold from being outside. "I'll try," he said. "I don't know if I'll be good at it, but I'll try. That's all I'm asking." He dropped his hand, stepped back, put the careful distance between them again. "I should go. I just wanted to see you. To thank you, to what? To make sure you were real, that this was real, that I wasn't imagining the only person who's been honest with me in years." He left before she could respond. Just turned and walked out of the parlor, out of the house, back into the snowy evening. Cecilia watched him go from the window, watched his dark coat disappear into the gray dusk. Then she noticed the man across the street. Gray coat, dark hair, standing under a street lamp, watching the house, watching Adrian leave. Cecilia's heart kicked hard against her ribs. She stepped back from the window quickly, but not before the man looked up, not before their eyes met for a brief electric moment. Then he smiled, cold and knowing, and walked away into the snow. She told Adrian about the man the next day. They were in the garden. Lily was building a snowman with Thomas's help, her laughter bright and clear in the cold air. Adrian and Cecilia stood apart watching, pretending to be casual, pretending not to be planning a wedding in 8 days. "There's a man watching the house," Cecilia said quietly. "Gray coat. He was at my father's funeral. And last night when you left, he was across the street." Adrian's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture, a tension, a readiness. "Did he approach you?" "No, just watched." "What did he look like? Tall? Maybe 40? Dark hair going gray at the temples?" "He smiled at me. It wasn't friendly." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "Then I know who he is." "You do. His name is Marcus Thorne. He's a debt collector. Or at least that's what he calls himself." "What does he want?" "Money your father owed, or thought he owed." "The man is a parasite, Cecilia. He finds families in crisis and bleeds them dry, makes debts where none exist, forges documents, destroys reputations." "You sound like you know him well." "I've dealt with men like him before. In Chicago. They're all the same, all predators." Cecilia watched Lily pack snow with her small, mittened hands. The child was singing something, a nursery rhyme about winter. Her voice was sweet and slightly off-key. "Is he dangerous?" Cecilia asked. "Not physically, but financially, socially, yes, very dangerous." "What does he want from us?" "From you payment for whatever debt he claims your father owed. From me, he wants me to go away, to break the engagement, to leave your family vulnerable so he can take everything." "Why?" Adrian turned to look at her. His gray eyes were hard, cold. "Because men like Marcus Thorne hate men like me. New money, outsiders. We don't play by the old rules. We don't respect the old hierarchies. And when we succeed, when we marry into families like yours, it breaks the system they have been profiting from for generations. So this marriage protects me from him. Yes, once we're married, once the Blackwood name and fortune are attached to yours, Thorne has no leverage. He can't touch you without touching me. And my father, for all his faults, doesn't tolerate people who threaten his family." Cecilia should have felt relieved, protected, but instead she just felt trapped. Another layer of obligation. Another reason this marriage was necessity instead of choice. "You should have told me," she said, "about Thorne, about the danger." "Would it have changed anything?" "No, but I deserve to know." "You're right, I'm sorry." They fell silent. In the garden, Lily was putting a carrot nose on her snowman. Thomas was helping her find stones for eyes. The scene was so normal, so peaceful, like they were just a family enjoying a winter afternoon, like they weren't all performing roles in a play none of them had written. "I have to go to Chicago," Adrian said suddenly. "Tomorrow, my father wants me there for business. I'll be back in 3 days, 4 at most. The wedding is in a week." "I know, I'll be back in time. I promise." "Will you take Lily?" "No, she'll stay with her nanny. It's safer that way." "Safer from what?" "From your father." Adrian's silence was answer enough. Cecilia felt something cold settle in her stomach. "He doesn't know, does he?" that you're bringing her here after the wedding, that she'll live with us. He knows I have a daughter. He doesn't know I plan to acknowledge her publicly. Adrian, that's necessary. Cecilia, my father, would never allow it, would never let me give Lily my name. Not really. That's why this marriage has to happen first. Once you're my wife, once the Ashford name is legally tied to Blackwood, he can't stop me, can't disinherit me without destroying the very alliance he paid for. You're using me. Yes, just as you're using me. That's what this is. That's what it's always been. The honesty should have stung, but it didn't. It just felt like truth, hard and cold and utterly clear. When you come back from Chicago, Cecilia said, we need to talk, really talk about expectations, about boundaries, about what this marriage actually looks like once we're living it. Agreed. And Adrian, if there are any more secrets, any more men watching houses or debts I don't know about, or reasons this marriage might fall apart, I need you to tell me. Now, before it's too late. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. There's one more thing. Of course there is. The house, after we're married, I want you to keep it. What? This house, the Ashford mansion. I don't want to own it. It's yours, your family's. It should stay that way. That's not part of the contract. Your father, I'll handle my father. The house is yours, Cecilia. You're giving up enough. You shouldn't have to give up your home too. Before she could respond, Lily came running over. Her coat was covered in snow. Her cheeks were red from cold and happiness. Papa, Miss Ashford, come see Mr. Thomas help me make the best snowman ever. They followed her to her creation. It was lopsided and small and perfect. Cecilia crouched down beside Lily, adjusting the scarf they had wrapped around the snowman's neck. He's wonderful, she said. What's his name? Mr. Frost, because he's made of frost. Thomas helped me think of it. It's perfect, Lily beamed. Then she threw her arms around Cecilia's neck in an impulsive hug, brief, sticky, smelling of snow and wool and childhood. I'm glad Papa found you, she whispered. You're nice, and you smell like flowers. She pulled back and ran off to show Thomas something else. Leaving Cecilia kneeling in the snow, throat-tight, eyes stinging with tears she refused to shed. When she looked up, Adrian was watching her with an expression she couldn't name. Something raw, something real. 3 days, he said quietly. I'll be back in 3 days. I'll be here. He reached down, helped her to her feet. His hand was warm even through both their gloves. For a moment, they just stood there, connected, breathing mist into the cold air. Then he let go, stepped back, called to Lily that it was time to leave. Cecilia watched them go, father and daughter, dark coats against white snow. She watched until they disappeared around the corner. Then she looked across the street. The man in the gray coat was back. Marcus Thorne. He lifted one hand, a small wave, a mockery of friendliness. Then he turned and walked away, leaving nothing but footprints in the fresh snow. Cecilia stood in the cold garden and wondered what other secrets were waiting to surface, what other prices she'd have to pay, what other truths were buried under layers of lies and snow and time. Inside, Thomas was watching from the window. When their eyes met, he gave a small, grim nod. The game was being played, the pieces were moving, and in 6 days, Cecilia would become Mrs. Adrian Blackwood, whether she was ready or not. The letter arrived the next morning. No postmark, no return address, just her name written on the envelope in unfamiliar handwriting. Thomas brought it to her at breakfast with a troubled expression. This was slipped under the door, he said, sometime during the night. Cecilia took it. The paper was heavy, expensive. She turned it over in her hands, suddenly afraid to open it. Should I stay? Thomas asked. No, thank you, I'll be fine. She waited until he left. Then she broke the seal and unfolded the single sheet inside. Miss Ashford, you do not know me, but I knew your brother. Oliver and I served together in France. We were friends, brothers in arms, until he betrayed that brotherhood. Your father knew what Oliver did, knew the blood on his hands, knew the lies he told to cover it up. And your father paid me to keep silent, paid me well for 3 years. But now your father is dead and the payments have stopped. I have debts too, Miss Ashford, debts that must be paid. I'm told you're marrying Adrian Blackwood, a wealthy man, a powerful man. I'm sure he would be very interested to know about your family's secrets. about Oliver's crimes, about the blood money your father paid. Unless, of course, we can come to an arrangement. I will be at the Old North Church tomorrow at noon. Come alone. Bring $5,000. Or bring Mr. Blackwood and let him learn what kind of family he's marrying into. The choice as always is yours. Sincerely, a friend from the war. Cecilia read it twice. Then a third time. Her hands weren't shaking. She was surprised by that. She felt cold, calm, like she'd been expecting this. Like some part of her had always known it would come. $5,000. She didn't have $5,000. Didn't have 500. The family accounts were empty. Anything of value was already sold or pledged or promised to creditors. She could tell Adrian, should tell Adrian. He'd said to trust him, said they were partners. But the letter mentioned Oliver's crimes. Blood on his hands. What had Oliver done in France? What had he covered up? And why had her father paid to keep it secret? If Adrian knew, if anyone knew, would the marriage still happen? Would he still want to tie his name to hers if the Ashford family wasn't just bankrupt but criminal? Cecilia folded the letter carefully, put it in her pocket. Then she went to find Thomas. He was in the library packing the last of the books. When he saw her face, he set down what he was holding. What happened? She handed him the letter, watched him read it, watched his face go gray. Marcus Thorne, he said. I thought you said you didn't know his name. I didn't, but this confirms what I suspected. He's the one who blackmailed Oliver, and now he's coming for you. What did Oliver do, Thomas? What crimes is he talking about? The old butler sat down heavily in one of the armchairs. He looked every one of his 60 years, every day of all the secrets he'd carried. There was an incident, he said finally. In France, Oliver's unit was sent on a raid behind enemy lines. It went wrong. Half the boys didn't come back. The official report said they were killed by German fire. But Oliver told me the truth before he died. What truth? That he panicked, gave the wrong order, led them into an ambush because he was scared and confused and the shells were falling and he couldn't think straight. 7 boys died because of his mistake. Thomas's voice was hollow, empty. The army covered it up, said they were heroes killed in action, gave them medals. Oliver was recommended for promotion, but he knew, and someone else knew. This man, this friend from the war. So he blackmailed Oliver. Yes, and when Oliver couldn't pay anymore, when the weight of it became too much, he ended it. Your father found the blackmail letters after. Paid Thorne to keep quiet, to protect Oliver's memory, to protect the family. And now Thorne wants more. He'll always want more. Men like him never stop, never have enough. Cecilia stood, walked to the window. The street outside was empty, gray skank, gray snow, gray world. I have to meet him, she said. No, you tell Mr. Blackwood. Let him handle this. And tell him that my brother got 7 men killed, that my father paid blackmail money for years, that the family he's marrying into is built on lies and cowardice. Better he knows now than after the wedding. The wedding has to happen, Thomas. For Lily, for Adrian, for all of us. If Thorne destroys that, if he takes away the one thing keeping us afloat, then we all drown. So what will you do? Cecilia turned from the window. I don't know yet, but I have until noon tomorrow to figure it out. She left Thomas in the library with the books and the secrets. Went to her room, closed the door, sat on her bed and stared at the letter until the words blurred together. $5,000. Oliver's crimes. Blood money. The choice is yours. She thought about her brother, his gray eyes, his shaking hands, his last whispered words. Promise me you'll get out. She'd promised, and she'd lied. Just like he had. Just like they all had. Cecilia lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling and wondered if there was anyone in this city, in this whole cursed family, who'd ever told the truth about anything. Tomorrow at noon, she'd find out. Tomorrow at noon, Marcus Thorne would learn that Ashford women didn't break easily. Tomorrow at noon, everything would change again. But tonight, she was just a girl in a too-big house waiting for a wedding to a man she barely knew trying to save a family that might not deserve saving. Tonight, she was just tired, so tired. The clock ticked toward midnight, toward tomorrow, toward all the choices she'd have to make. Outside, snow began to fall again, silent, endless, covering everything in white, covering all their sins. The Old North Church stood silent in the gray noon light. Cecilia arrived 10 minutes early. The streets were empty. Most of Boston was at lunch or huddled inside against the February cold. She stood across from the church and looked up at its white steeple piercing the low clouds. Two lanterns, the history book said. Paul Revere's signal, one if by land, two if by sea. She wondered what signal she was supposed to give today. One if you're brave, two if you're desperate. She was both. The church door opened with a groan that echoed through the empty sanctuary. Inside, it was darker, colder. Rows of box pews stretched toward the altar. High windows let in pale winter light that turned everything gray and insubstantial. Like a memory, like a ghost. Marcus Thorne sat in the back pew on the left side. He didn't stand when she entered, just watched her walk down the aisle toward him. He was older than she'd thought from a distance, late 40s maybe, handsome in a worn way, like a once fine coat that had seen too many seasons. Miss Ashford, his voice was smooth, educated. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? We always have choices. That's the beautiful thing about life. And the terrible thing. Cecilia stopped at the pew in front of his, close enough to talk, far enough to run. You knew my brother. I did. Oliver was a good man, a good soldier, until he wasn't. The letter said he got men killed. 7 men, boys really, 18, 19 years old, farm boys from Indiana, factory workers from Pittsburgh. They followed Oliver's orders, trusted him, and he led them straight into a German machine gun nest. Marcus said it calmly, factually, like he was describing the weather. But Cecilia could hear something underneath. Old grief, old rage, never quite healed. You were there, she said. I was. I survived. They didn't. Neither did Oliver, really. He just took 3 more years to finish dying. So you blackmailed him. I asked for compensation, for the families, for the widows and mothers and children left behind. The army called them heroes, gave them medals. But heroes don't pay rent or put food on tables. Money does. Oliver's family had money. Those boys' families didn't. It seemed fair. And when Oliver couldn't pay anymore, then your father paid, gladly, to protect the family name, to protect his son's memory. I have his letters, you know, promising to pay, promising discretion, promising everything would be handled quietly. Marcus reached into his coat. Cecilia tensed, but he just pulled out a bundle of envelopes tied with string, set them on the pew beside him. I don't want to destroy you, he said. Or your family. I just want what's owed. $5,000. For now. And then more. Always more. Because the debt is never paid, Miss Ashford. Those 7 boys are still dead. Their families are still poor. And your family is still rich, or will be once you marry Adrian Blackwood. Cecilia felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. You'll never stop. This isn't about justice. It's about revenge. Can it be both? She looked at him, really looked at him, saw the bitterness carved into the lines around his mouth, the anger living behind his eyes, the wound that had never healed and never would. I don't have $5,000, she said quietly. Then get it from your fiancé. I'm sure he can spare it. And if I don't, Marcus smiled, it wasn't kind, then I attend your wedding, stand up during the part where they ask if anyone objects. And I tell everyone exactly what the Ashford family is built on. Blood and lies and cowardice. You'd ruin my wedding out of spite, out of justice. There's a difference. Is there? The words echoed in the empty church. Cecilia's own question, Adrian's question. The question that seemed to follow her everywhere now. She sat down in the pew, turned to face Marcus directly. What happened to you after the war? He looked startled. What? You survived. You came home. What happened to you? That's not relevant. I think it is. I think you're here because something broke inside you over there, and you've been trying to make someone pay for it ever since. But it's not about the 7 boys anymore. It's about you. About what you lost that you can never get back. Marcus's expression went hard. You don't know anything about me. I know grief. I know what it does to people, what it did to Oliver, what it's doing to you. Don't psychoanalyze me, Miss Ashford. I'm not some tragic figure in your little drama. I'm just a man collecting a debt. No, Cecilia leaned forward. You're a man who's been alone for too long with his ghosts, just like Oliver was, just like I am, just like half of Boston is after that war. But destroying me won't bring those boys back. It won't heal whatever's broken in you. Then what will, I don't know, but this isn't it. They sat in silence. Around them, the church held its breath, waited. Above them, dust motes drifted through the pale light. Finally, Marcus spoke. His voice was quieter now, tired. Your mother knew them, you know. The boys who died. Not personally, but she knew their families. Cecilia went still. What? One of them, Michael Brennan, his mother worked for the Ashfords. Before the war, kitchen maid or something. Your mother dismissed her in 1916. No warning, no reference. The woman ended up in a tenement in the North End, and when her son died in France, she had nothing. No one. Your father's blood money didn't go to her. I made sure it went to the others, but she died alone, penniless, 6 months after the war ended. Why are you telling me this? Because your mother knows what I know, knows what Oliver did, knows her own culpability and how that family suffered. And she's been living with it for 7 years. That's not possible. My mother would have told me. Would she? The same woman who's selling you to the Blackwoods to save face, the same woman who stood at your father's funeral and didn't shed a tear? You think she's capable of honesty? Cecilia stood. She needed to move, needed to think. She walked to the altar and back. Her footsteps echoed too loud in the empty space. What do you want from me, Mr. Thorne? Really want? I want you to know what you're part of, what this family has done. And I want you to decide if you're going to continue the lie or break it. Break it how? Tell the truth at your wedding. Stand up in front of all those people and tell them what Oliver did. What your father paid for. What your mother knows. Burn it all down and start clean. That would destroy my family. Your family is already destroyed. You're just maintaining the corpse. Cecilia turned to face him. And if I do this, if I confess everything at my wedding, what then? You disappear. Leave us alone. Yes. I don't believe you. Smart girl. She walked back to his pew, sat down beside him this time, close enough to see the gray in his hair, the age spots on his hands, the weariness in every line of his face. I'll make you a deal, she said. Not $5,000, not public confession. Something else. I'm listening. The truth, the whole truth, not about Oliver, about you, about why you're really doing this, and then I'll decide if you deserve anything at all. Marcus studied her. For a long moment, she thought he'd refuse, get angry, leave. But then something shifted in his expression, something that looked almost like relief. Your mother and I were engaged once, he said quietly, before she married your father, before the war, before any of this. Cecilia felt the world tilt. What, 1912, I was nobody, son of a shopkeeper. But I loved her. God, I loved her. And she loved me, or said she did. We were going to run away together, start over somewhere new, somewhere we could be equals. What happened? Her parents found out, forbade it, told her she was promised to Henry Ashford, that the families had agreed that her duty was clear. She chose duty, chose money and status and a life she didn't want. And I joined the army and went to France and watched better men than me die in the mud. He looked at his hands, old hands, scarred hands, hands that had held weapons and written blackmail letters and carried grief for too long. When I came back, she was Mrs. Henry Ashford. You were 3 years old. Oliver was 7. She saw me once on the street, looked right through me like I was a ghost, like those years that loved that promise, like none of it had ever existed. So this is about revenge on my mother. This is about making her see what her choice cost, not just me, but all of us. The Brennan boy who died because Oliver panicked. His mother who died in poverty. Oliver himself who couldn't live with what he'd done. All of it traces back to one moment, one choice, when Eleanor chose duty over love. Cecilia sat very still, processing, understanding, finally seeing the whole picture. You're in love with her still. I hate her. Same thing. Sometimes. Marcus laughed. It was a bitter sound, empty. You're very perceptive, Miss Ashford. I can see why Blackwood chose you. He didn't choose me. He needs me. There's a difference. Is there, she smiled despite everything, despite the secrets and lies and the weight of history pressing down. Everyone keeps asking me that. Maybe because the line between need and choice and love is thinner than we like to admit. Cecilia stood. I'll talk to my mother, get you your truth, but not through blackmail, not through threats, through honesty. For once in this family, actual honesty. And if she refuses, then you'll have your answer about whether she's capable of change, about whether any of us are. She walked toward the door, stopped, turned back. Those boys, the 7 who died, do you know where their families are now? Most of them, why? Because after I'm married, after the Blackwood money is legally attached to my name, I'm going to make sure they're taken care of. Really taken care of. Not blood money, not guilt payments, just reparation. If they'll accept it. Why would you do that? Because Oliver can't, and my father won't. And someone has to actually try to make things right instead of just making them quiet. She left him in the church. Left him with his ghosts and his grief and his ancient corroding love. Walked out into the gray afternoon and breathed cold air and felt something like clarity settle over her. She had 4 days until the wedding. 4 days to talk to her mother. 4 days to decide if she was going to be another Eleanor Ashford choosing duty over truth or something different, something new. Eleanor was in the conservatory when Cecilia found her. The room was cold, no heat. The plants were dead or dying, brown leaves, wilted stems, years of neglect. Her mother sat on the wrought iron bench in the center, wrapped in a shawl, staring at nothing. Mother, Cecilia said. Eleanor didn't turn. The wedding dress is ready. It will be delivered tomorrow. I don't care about the dress. You should. Mrs. Cabot will be there. Half of Boston will be there. First impressions matter. Mother, look at me. Finally, Eleanor turned. Her face was composed, perfectly made up, but there were shadows under her eyes, lines that hadn't been there a month ago. The cracks in her armor were showing. I met with Marcus Thorne today, Cecilia said. The name fell between them like a stone into still water. For a moment, Eleanor's mask slipped completely. Fear, raw and primal. Then it was back. The composed expression, the rigid control. I don't know who that is, she said. Yes, you do. You were engaged to him. Before father. Before everything. That's ridiculous. Is it? He told me everything, Mother. About the engagement. About how you chose duty over love. About Michael Brennan and the 7 boys and Oliver's crime and father's payments. Everything. Eleanor stood, walked to the dead rosebush in the corner, touched a brittle leaf that crumbled at her touch. What does he want? He wants you to tell the truth. The truth, Eleanor laughed. It was a terrible sound, like breaking glass. The truth is a luxury for people who can afford consequences. We cannot. Can't we, Mother? We're already losing everything. The house, the money, the reputation, what's left to protect you, your future, your chance at happiness. Happiness built on lies isn't happiness. It's just another kind of prison. Eleanor turned. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. You think I don't know that? You think I've been happy one single day in the last 30 years I did what I was supposed to do, married who I was supposed to marry, had the children I was supposed to have, lived the life I was supposed to live, and it's been nothing but duty and disappointment in watching people I loved destroy themselves because they couldn't carry the weight. Oliver, your father, myself, all of us crushed under the weight of what was expected, what was proper, what was right. Was Marcus Thorne right? Would you have been happy with him? Eleanor was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I don't know, but I would have been myself, for better or worse. I would have been Eleanor Brennan instead of Eleanor Ashford. And maybe that would have been enough. Brennan, Cecilia said, like Michael Brennan, the boy who died. Marcus's cousin. We were all going to be family once, run the shop together, have ordinary lives, ordinary troubles. But my parents found out, threatened to disown me, to cut me off completely. I was 20 years old. I was terrified. So I chose safety, chose Henry Ashford and his money and his name, and I've regretted it every day since. She sank back onto the bench, looked suddenly old, defeated. When Marcus came back from the war, I saw him on Beacon Street. He looked at me like I'd killed him, like I was the bullet that had torn through him and left him alive but broken. And maybe I was. Cecilia sat beside her mother. For the first time in years, maybe ever, she took Eleanor's hand. It was cold, small, fragile as bird bones. He's blackmailing us, Cecilia said gently, threatening to expose everything at the wedding unless we pay him. How much? $5,000. We don't have $5,000. I know. They sat in silence, two women in a dead garden, two ghosts in a dying house. Outside, snow began to fall again. It never seemed to stop this winter. What are you going to do? Eleanor asked finally. I'm going to tell Adrian everything, Oliver's crime, father's payments, Marcus's threats, your history, all of it. He'll break the engagement. Maybe, maybe not. But he deserves to know what he's marrying into. And I deserve to know if he'll stay anyway. And if he leaves, then at least I'll know the truth about him, about us, about whether this marriage is built on anything real or just mutual desperation. Eleanor squeezed Cecilia's hand, just once. Gentle. You're braver than I ever was. No, I'm just more desperate. And I've seen where your kind of courage leads. Oliver dead, father dead, you alone in a dead garden with a man you never loved. I won't be that, Mother. I won't. What will you be then? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out, even if it means losing everything. She stood, helped her mother up. They walked out of the conservatory together, through the halls of the dying mansion, past the covered furniture and empty rooms and portraits of dead Ashfords watching with judgmental eyes. At the foot of the stairs, Eleanor stopped. Tell Adrian, she said, that if he stays, if he marries you knowing everything, then he has my blessing, real blessing. Not the kind I gave your father on our wedding day while I was crying inside. The kind that means, well, I believe he might actually make you happy. And if he goes, then he was never worthy of you anyway. Eleanor climbed the stairs slowly, an old woman climbing toward her tomb. Cecilia watched her go. Then she went to the study, sat at her father's desk, and began to write. Dear Adrian, there are things I need to tell you before the wedding. Things about my family, about Oliver, about why we're really in this situation. I'm going to tell you all of it, the truth, finally. And then you can decide if you still want to marry me. If you don't, I'll understand. I'll tell everyone the engagement was my decision, that I changed my mind. You'll be free. Lily will be safe, and I'll find another way forward. But if you stay, if you choose to marry me knowing everything, then I promise you this, I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of that choice, trying to build something real, something true, something that isn't just survival, but actual life. Come to the house tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. I'll tell you everything, and then we'll see what we're really made of. Yours, Cecilia. She sealed the letter, called Thomas, sent him to deliver it to Adrian's hotel. Then she sat in the dark study and waited. Waited for tomorrow night. Waited for truth or disaster. Waited to see if she was about to save her life or destroy it completely. Adrian arrived exactly at 7. Thomas showed him to the library, the only room still fully furnished. Still warm, still alive. Cecilia stood by the fire and watched him enter. He looked tired. 3 days in Chicago had aged him. Or maybe it was just the weight of everything finally showing. Your letter, he said. It sounded ominous. Sit down, please. He sat. Cecilia remained standing. She'd practiced this, rehearsed what she would say. But now facing him, all the careful words evaporated. My brother killed 7 men, she said bluntly. Not directly, but through cowardice and bad orders and panic. In France, during the war. And my father paid blackmail money for 3 years to keep it secret. And now the man who was blackmailing us is threatening to expose everything at the wedding unless we pay him $5,000, which we don't have. The words tumbled out, rushed, graceless, but honest. Finally honest. Adrian sat very still, his gray eyes on hers, unreadable. Go on. So she told him. Everything. Oliver's mistake. The 7 dead boys. Marcus Thorne and his old engagement to Eleanor. The blood money. The lies. The secrets folded into more secrets, until it was impossible to know where truth ended and fiction began. When she finished, the room was silent except for the crackling fire. Finally, Adrian spoke. Is that everything? Yes. No more secrets, no more surprises. Not that I know of. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the snowy street. Cecilia watched his back, the set of his shoulders, the tension in his spine. She waited for him to leave, to turn around and tell her the engagement was over, that he couldn't tie himself to this mess. Instead, he said, My mother was a prostitute. Cecilia blinked. What? My mother, before she met my father, before Chicago, before Blackwood Steel, she worked in a brothel in Cleveland. My father was a client. He fell in love with her, married her against his own family's wishes. They disowned him. He built his empire from nothing to prove them wrong. Adrian turned. She died when I was 12. Cancer. Before she died, she made my father promise that I would never be ashamed of her, that I would never hide what she was, what we were, where we came from. Why are you telling me this? Because I understand secrets. I understand shame. I understand what it costs to bury the past and pretend it never happened. And I understand that families are messy and complicated and full of ghosts we can't escape. He crossed the room, stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes, see the faint scar tissue where that old wound had healed. I don't care about Oliver's mistakes, he said quietly. I don't care about your father's debts or your mother's lost love or any of it. I care about you, about who you're trying to be despite all of it. And that woman is worth marrying. Cecilia felt her throat tighten. You're not leaving. No, hon. Even knowing everything, especially knowing everything. Why would I? Because you trusted me enough to tell me. Because you gave me a choice. Because, he paused, took a breath. Because somewhere in the last 2 weeks, this stopped being just a contract for me. And I think maybe it stopped being just survival for you too. Cecilia wanted to deny it, wanted to keep the careful distance, the safe separation between need and want. But she was so tired of lying, tired of pretending, tired of being alone with her grief and her ghosts. What about Marcus Thorne? She asked. What about the $5,000? I'll pay him. Adrian, you can't. I can, and I will. Not because he deserves it, but because it ends this, cleanly, finally, and then we can move forward without looking back. He'll just ask for more. Not after I have a conversation with him. Trust me. There was something in his voice, something hard, something that reminded Cecilia that Adrian Blackwood wasn't just a wealthy man playing at business. He was William Blackwood's son. He'd grown up in Chicago steel mills. He knew how to handle men like Marcus Thorne. I don't want you to fight my battles, she said. Then don't think of it as fighting your battle. Think of it as me defending what's mine. Because in 3 days you will be mine. Legally, actually, and I protect what's mine. Is that what I am, a possession? No. He reached up, touched her face, gentle, tentative, like she was something precious, something that might break. You're my future, if you'll have me. I thought I didn't have a choice. You always had a choice. I'm just hoping you'll choose this. Choose us. Choose whatever this is becoming. Cecilia leaned into his touch. Let herself feel it. The warmth, the connection, the possibility that maybe this marriage wouldn't be just another prison. Maybe it would be something else, something unexpected, something real. I choose this, she whispered. God help me. I choose you. Adrian kissed her then, soft, brief, a promise. Then he pulled back and smiled. Actually small and She'd never seen him smile before. It transformed his whole face, made him younger, less haunted. 3 days, he said. Can you survive 3 more days? I've survived worse. Yes, you have. He left shortly after, left her standing by the fire with her hand pressed to her lips, still feeling the ghost of that kiss, that promise, that choice. The outside snow was still falling, but for the first time all winter, Cecilia didn't feel cold. The wedding day dawned gray and heavy with snow. Cecilia woke to Thomas knocking softly on her door. Miss Cecilia, it's time. Time, she rose, bathed, let her mother help her into the dress. The silk was cold against her skin, heavy, real. Her mother fastened each button with careful fingers. When she was finished, she stepped back. You look beautiful, Eleanor said softly, like a bride instead of a sacrifice. Maybe I'm both. Maybe we all are. Downstairs, the house was transformed. Flowers everywhere. White roses, gardenias, lilies. The dead mansion brought briefly back to life. Guests were already arriving. Boston society in their finest, whispering behind gloved hands, watching, judging, waiting for scandal. Cecilia stood at the top of the stairs and looked down at them all, vultures in silk dresses and diamond pins. She thought about Marcus Thorne's letter, about standing up and telling the truth, about burning it all down. But then she saw Adrian. He stood at the altar in the main parlor, Lily beside him in a pale blue dress, holding Mr. Hobson, looking nervous. When he saw Cecilia at the top of the stairs, his expression softened. Just for her, just for this moment. And she remembered what Thomas had told her that first day, that Ashford women survived. But maybe, just maybe, they could do more than survive. Maybe they could live. She walked down the stairs, alone. No father to give her away, no brother to stand witness. Just herself. Choosing this, choosing him, choosing the uncertain future over the dead past. The ceremony was short, traditional. The minister spoke about duty and honor in the sanctity of marriage. Words that meant nothing and everything. When he asked if anyone objected, there was a long silence. Every eye turned to the back of the room. But Marcus Thorne wasn't there. Adrian had kept his promise. I do, Cecilia said when asked. I do, Adrian echoed. And just like that, she was Mrs. Adrian Blackwood. The reception was a blur. Champagne, toasts, Mrs. Cabot holding court in the corner, deciding whether this marriage was scandalous or strategic. Lily eating too much cake and falling asleep in Thomas's arms. Eleanor standing by the window watching snowfall, looking more at peace than Cecilia had ever seen her. When they finally escaped, left the mansion, and the gas and the weight of expectation behind it was near midnight, Adrian helped Cecilia into the car. Lily was already asleep in the back, wrapped in blankets, Mr. Hobbs clutched to her chest. Where are we going? Cecilia asked. Away, far away, somewhere we can breathe. For how long? As long as it takes. They drove through the night. Boston disappeared behind them. Then the towns, then civilization itself. Just snow and trees and empty road. Cecilia fell asleep against Adrian's shoulder and dreamed of music. When she woke, it was dawn, and they were somewhere else entirely. The house in Maine was small, not a mansion, not even close. Just a cottage on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic. Weathered wood, stone chimney, windows facing east toward the sunrise. Adrian carried Lily inside, put her in the small bedroom with the quilt-covered bed and the nautical paintings. Then he led Cecilia to the main room. It was simple. A fireplace, a sofa, a table, and in the corner by the window, a piano. You said you played, Adrian said. I thought you might want to keep playing. Cecilia walked to it, an upright, not as grand as the Steinway in Boston, but beautiful in its simplicity. She touched the keys. They were warm, like someone had been playing them recently. You practiced, she said. I wanted to surprise you. I'm not very good, but Lily wanted to learn the song you taught her, so I've been trying. You bought this house for me. I bought it for us, for when we needed to escape, for when Boston felt too small and too loud and too full of ghosts. I bought it so we could be ourselves instead of performing for everyone else. Cecilia sat at the piano, played the C major scale, 8 notes, simple, pure. Then she began to improvise. something new. Not grief this time, not loss, just melody finding its way forward. Adrian stood behind her. After a moment, his hands settled on her shoulders, just resting there, connecting them. What happens now? She asked without stopping playing. I don't know. We live, we figure it out. We make mistakes and fix them and make new mistakes. We raise Lily. We survive the Blackwoods and the Ashfords and whatever comes next. What about love? What about it? Do you think we'll find it somewhere in all the survival and figuring out and making mistakes? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. His hands on her shoulders tightened just slightly. I think we already have. We just haven't admitted it yet. Cecilia's hands stilled on the keys. She turned on the bench, looked up at him, his gray eyes, his scarred eyebrow, his face that was becoming familiar. Beloved. I love you, she said, simply, truthfully. I don't know when it happened. Probably gradually. Probably without me noticing. But I do. I love you, and I choose you every day, for as long as you'll have me. Adrian knelt beside the bench, took her hands in his. I love you too. Since the moment you played piano at your father's funeral and looked like grief incarnate, since you knelt down to meet my daughter at eye level, since you trusted me with your family's secrets, since you chose to stay instead of run, I love you. All of you, even the parts you think are broken. He kissed her then. Real, deep, a promise kept, a future beginning. When they pulled apart, Lily was standing in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Mr. Hops dragging on the floor. Are you kissing? She asked, very seriously. Yes, Adrian said. Does that mean Miss Ashford is staying? It means Miss Ashford is now Mrs. Blackwood. And yes, she's staying. Lily considered this. Then she walked over and climbed into Cecilia's lap, settled there like she belonged. Good, I like her. And she plays piano prettily, Adrian corrected. That's what I said. Cecilia wrapped her arms around the child, this small person who had somehow become hers, this unexpected gift. She looked at Adrian over Lily's dark curls and saw her future. Not perfect, not easy, but real, chosen, hers. Play the song, Lily demanded. The one you taught me. So Cecilia played. Major scale, 8 notes, while her daughter, because that's what Lily was now hers as much as Adrian's, pressed keys beside her. While her husband stood at the window, watching the Atlantic gray and restless below. While the snow fell soft outside and the fire crackled warm inside, and the morning stretched long and quiet before them. This was happiness, she realized. Not the absence of grief or pain or ghosts, but the presence of choice, of love, of people worth surviving for, worth living for. She played until Lily got bored and wandered off to explore, until Adrian joined her on the bench and tried to remember the melody she was teaching him, until the music became not perfect, but theirs, until it was just sound and warmth, and the three of them breathing in time in the small house by the sea. 1 year later, the gallery opening was packed. Cecilia stood in the corner with a glass of champagne and watched Adrian work the room. He'd been painting for 6 months now. Landscapes mostly, seascapes, the view from their cottage, the Atlantic in all its moods, the snow-covered pines, the rocky beaches. He was good, really good. Good enough that a small gallery in Portland had offered him a show. Tonight was the opening. Boston society had driven up. Curious, skeptical, ready to judge. But the paintings spoke for themselves. They're beautiful. Cecilia turned. Eleanor stood beside her, far and older, softer. She'd moved to a small apartment in Cambridge, spent her days volunteering at settlement houses, working with war widows, trying to make amends. He's talented, Cecilia said. He's free. That's what you see in the paintings. Freedom. We all are now. Free. Finally. Eleanor smiled. Yes, finally. Across the room, Lily danced between guests. 8 years old now. Bold. Bright. No longer shy. She attended school in town, had friends, had a normal childhood, the kind her father never had. The kind Cecilia never had. Have you heard from Marcus? Eleanor asked quietly. No, not since Adrian paid him. Not since, she trailed off. They didn't talk about it much. What Adrian had said to Marcus, what arrangements had been made. But whatever it was, it had worked. Marcus Thorne had disappeared. The blackmail had ended. The secret stayed buried, mostly buried. I saw him, Eleanor said, last month in Cambridge. He was visiting a grave. I didn't approach, just watched. He looked older, tired, but peaceful, like he'd finally let go of something. Did he see you? Yes. We looked at each other across the cemetery, just for a moment, and then he left. Do you regret it choosing father instead of him? Eleanor was quiet for a long time. I regret how it happened, the lies I told, the pain I caused, but I can't regret the path completely because it gave me Oliver and you. And even though Oliver is gone, you're here, you're happy. That has to count for something. It does. Adrian appeared beside them, holding Lily's hand. His other arms slid around Cecilia's waist. Natural, easy, like they'd been doing this forever. They're asking for you, he said. The arts reporter from the Globe wants an interview. Tell them I'm busy with my family. Art world doesn't work that way. Then the art world will have to adjust. He kissed her temple. As you wish, Mrs. Blackwood. Later, when the gallery had emptied and the champagne was gone and Lily was asleep in the car, they drove back to the cottage. The lighthouse beams swept across the water, rhythmic, eternal, marking time. At home, Cecilia tucked Lily into bed, kissed her forehead, closed the door softly, found Adrian in the main room. He'd lit a fire, put on music, some jazz record from New York. Modern, new, nothing like the old Boston parlor music. They danced, slow, lazy, more swaying than actually dancing, his hands on her waist, her head on his shoulder, just moving together in the firelight. Thank you, she said. For what? For choosing me, for staying, for this. I didn't choose you, you chose me. Remember, we chose each other. There's a difference, for us. Was there? She smiled against his shoulder. Yes, all the difference in the world. They danced until the fire burned low, until the record ended, until there was nothing but silence and breathing and the sound of waves on rocks below. Then they went to bed, in the small room under the eaves, under quilts Eleanor had made. In the life they'd built from broken pieces and second chances and the courage to tell the truth. And if Cecilia dreamed that night, it wasn't of Oliver or her father or the dead house in Boston. It was of music and snow and a small gray-eyed girl who called her mama without hesitation. It was of Adrian's hands and his paintings and the way he looked at her like she was something precious instead of something sold. It was of the future, uncertain, imperfect, but entirely theirs. And when she woke in the morning, he was there, beside her, real, hers. The sun rose over the Atlantic. The lighthouse went dark. A new day began. And in the small house on the cliff in Maine, the Blackwood family, imperfect, cobbled together but utterly real, woke up and lived. Just lived. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The end.